Well now, pull up a chair. The day's work is done and the fire's crackling just right. There's a chill in the air that calls for a good story. Not just any story, mind you. We're talking about a tale whispered in castles and shouted on battlefields. It's a story of kings and knights, of magic and honor, of love and loss. It's the story of a king named Arthur. You've probably heard the name. We're going to talk about him, his legendary sword, his wise advisor, and the loyal knights at his famous table. These aren't just dusty old tales. They're stories that make you think about bravery, leadership, and fighting for what you believe in. So let the fire warm your face and let the world outside fade away for a little while. Let's journey back in time to Camelot, a kingdom where justice was the law and courage was the currency. We're going to walk those castle halls and ride alongside those knights. We're going to try and understand what made this legend so powerful that we're still talking about it today. This is about the heart of the story. It's about the feeling you get when you hear about a young boy pulling a sword from a stone and changing the world. It's about the spirit of adventure, the call to do something great. So lean back, get comfortable. The story of King Arthur is about to begin, and it's a story that belongs to all of us.
Things you only talk about at the back of the cave.
So who was this King Arthur? The stories paint a picture of a man who was more than just a ruler. He was a symbol, the once and future king, a leader who brought peace and unity to a land torn apart by war. Imagine a time when local warlords fought over every patch of dirt, when there was no law to protect the common folk. That was the Britain Arthur was born into. He was the man who stood up and said, "No more." He gathered the best and bravest men around him and created a kingdom built on justice and fairness. These men were known as the Knights of the Round Table, a brotherhood sworn to protect the weak and serve their king. Arthur's kingdom was called Camelot. It wasn't just a castle, it was an idea. It was a golden age, a brief, shining moment in history when anything seemed possible. Arthur and his queen Guinevere presided over a court that was the envy of the world. But Arthur was a man too. He had his struggles, his doubts, and his heartaches. He was betrayed by those he loved most, and he saw his dream of Camelot crumble into dust. That's what makes his story so powerful. He wasn't a perfect man made of stone. He was flesh and blood, a king who fought for a perfect world but had to live in an imperfect one. He shows us that true strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, time and time again. Every great story has a great beginning, and Arthur's is one of the best. It starts with a sword in a stone. Whoever could pull it free would be king. Knights and nobles tried and failed. Then came Arthur, a humble squire, just looking for a sword for his brother. He pulled the sword free with ease. The people hailed him as king, a miracle, a sign of destiny. Arthur's story shows greatness can come from the most unexpected places. Behind every great king, there's often a wise advisor, and Arthur had the best of them all. Merlin. Merlin was no ordinary counselor. He was a wizard, a prophet, a shapeshifter. He was a figure of immense power and mystery, a man who could see the past and the future. Merlin was the architect of Arthur's rise to power, the guiding hand that shaped his destiny. It was Merlin who arranged for the sword and the stone test, knowing that only Arthur could succeed. He was Arthur's teacher, protector, and strategist. Merlin's magic wasn't just about flashy tricks, it was a deep understanding of nature and fate. He used his power not for his own gain, but to help build the dream of Camelot. Merlin was wise, but also wild and unpredictable, a bit like nature itself. He foresaw Arthur's reign would be glorious, but also its tragic end. Ultimately, even the great Merlin had a weakness. His downfall came through his love for a young enchantress named Nimue. She used his magic to trap him forever, some say in a crystal cave or inside an old oak tree. Merlin's voice fell silent, and Arthur had to rule on his own, without his greatest guide. When Arthur became king, he knew he couldn't rule alone. He needed the support of the best knights in the land. But he didn't want the kind of court where men argued over who was most important. So, on the advice of Merlin, he created something new, the Round Table. It was a massive table, a gift from Queen Guinevere's father, with room for over 100 knights to sit together. The shape of the table was the important part. A round table has no head. Every man who sat at it was equal. A knight's position wasn't based on his wealth or his title, but on his valor and his deeds. This simple idea created a bond of brotherhood and fellowship that had never been seen before. It was a symbol of unity, a circle of trust. The knights who sat there swore an oath, a code of chivalry. They pledged to never do outrage or murder, to always flee treason, and to give mercy to those who asked for it. They swore to always help ladies, damsels, and gentlewomen, and to never use force against them. This code was the foundation of Camelot. Of course, being human, they didn't always live up to that code. They were brave and noble, yes, but they also had their flaws. The Round Table wasn't a gathering of saints. It was a gathering of men trying their best to be better. And that's a struggle we can all understand. Among all the knights of the Round Table, one stood above the rest, Sir Lancelot du Lac. He was the greatest fighter, the most chivalrous knight, the very picture of perfection. Lancelot was Arthur's champion and his dearest friend. But Lancelot had a secret, a fatal flaw that would eventually tear the kingdom apart. He was in love with Arthur's wife, Queen Guinevere. Their love was a forbidden thing, a secret they kept hidden for years. It was a love born of admiration and deep connection, but it was also a betrayal of the highest order. Their secret affair cast a shadow over the golden age of Camelot. The story of their love is one of the most famous and heartbreaking parts of the Arthurian legend. Eventually, their secret was exposed by Arthur's enemies, leading to a brutal civil war. The love between Lancelot and Guinevere became the crack in the foundation of Camelot. It brought the whole glorious kingdom crashing down. As the years went on, a new purpose appeared to the Knights of the Round Table, the quest for the Holy Grail. The Grail was said to be the cup that Jesus Christ drank from at the Last Supper. It was a holy relic, an object of immense spiritual power. One day, a vision of the Grail appeared in Arthur's hall, filling the knights with a sense of wonder and divine purpose. Led by Sir Gawain, many knights swore an oath to find the Grail. Arthur was saddened knowing the quest would take his best knights away from Camelot. The quest scattered the fellowship of the Round Table, sending them on a long and perilous journey. It wasn't about fighting dragons, it was a spiritual test. The Grail could only be achieved by a knight who was pure of heart. The quest for the Holy Grail marks a turning point in the legend, signaling the beginning of the end for the Round Table. Was there a real King Arthur? That's the million-dollar question. The honest answer is we don't know for sure. The first mentions of Arthur come from Welsh poems and histories written a few hundred years after he was supposed to have lived. Over the centuries, storytellers took this seed and helped it grow. The Arthur we know today is almost certainly a creation of legend, a figure built up over 1,000 years of storytelling. So why are we still talking about a king who may or may not have existed? The reason these stories last is because they're not really about a specific time or place. They're about courage, honor, love, betrayal, and the hope for a better world. The story of the sword and the stone tells us that anyone can be destined for greatness. The Round Table teaches us about the importance of equality and fighting for justice. The quest for the Holy Grail reminds us that there are things in life worth searching for. The tragic love of Lancelot and Guinevere shows us the powerful nature of the human heart. These legends have shown an incredible ability to change with the times. Every generation has retold the story in its own way. The legend is flexible enough to mean something new to each generation. In the end, maybe it doesn't matter so much whether Arthur was a real man. The legend of King Arthur has become a real force in the world. It's a story that inspires us to be better. It invites us to find our own Camelot, to gather our own round table of friends. The story isn't over. It's waiting for you to pick it up and add your own chapter.